Hey everybody, welcome to our webinar. Today is special. Special for me. We have a guest. We don't often do webinars with guests, and Sarah is a special guest. About a month ago, we did a web testimonial video together. It was basically a Zoom session, and I kind of caught her by surprise and said, "Hey, do you mind answering some questions and recording it and sharing it with the rest of the world?" And one thing led to another, and we decided, it would be fun if we did a webinar together as well as a testimonial. So I sent the testimonial, I think, to everybody on our newsletter. And if some of you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go and visit our YouTube channel and see Sarah and share her experience in about 4 minutes. So we decided we'd do a webinar together, and that we would talk about the program and share a couple of our most powerful and generic protocols that we've been using with our clients, and that she would share her perspective on how she's implemented that and how, because what we'll talk about it later. But yeah, there's some fun stuff there. And yeah, so we'll talk about that for about half an hour, and then we'll do a Q&A. And Sarah, do you I'm gonna start sharing the screen now. Screen sharing. Sarah, do you see the screen with the slides?
Fantastic.
Okay, perfect. So we titled this webinar "How to Improve Quality of Life in Our Kiddos with Developmental Disorders with Sensory Enrichment Therapy at Home." But before we go into this, I want to do a quick segue, or it's not even a segue, a quick side note. With our schools program, we're making a big push to bring enrichment and brain plasticity into schools, and we've got an app that special educators and therapists in schools can use to do enrichment protocols with their students in groups or one-on-one. And it's very exciting. We're doing a couple of pilots right now, and the results are really exciting. So please reach out to me at kim@mendability.com or schools@mendability.com, or just call us at 801-872-3971, and we can talk more about it. Okay, so I think before we talk more about the exercises and everything, we should. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I have walked through this program, and I have 2 children who have autism, and my youngest is also diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder and ADHD. And so we've both walked through for both children this program, and we homeschool, and I have a background in early childhood education, ABA therapy. I've been an educational assistant in a school system, and yeah, I'm currently a nutritionist student as well. So there's lots that I could say about the therapy, but I'm pretty excited about it, and really happy to be here and share our experience, because it's pretty powerful.
Thanks, Sarah. And when we organized the webinar, we thought, okay, for people who come and attend, we're going to come up with some bonuses, and we scratch our heads and we come up with some things that I think are pretty cool. So obviously we're going to share today's slides and the sample exercises that we're going to share with you during the webinar, along with the instructions. But also we thought of giving some discount codes, because you know what, it's Christmas, and I think Black Friday in the States was like 2 days ago, well, last week. A discount code on the online course that we've designed for parents, a discount code for the therapy program, and I think this is the cool one, the one that excites me the most, is a free consultation now. Free consultations are over the websites and usually talked with me, or you talk with Rachel, or we don't actually get to do a free consultation with Claudie. She's our program director. She's the one who does the platinum plans, and she's a therapy coach for a lot of our clients. And with that free consultation, one additional exercise on top of the ones that we're going to share with you. So I think this is pretty cool. During this webinar, we're going to answer what is sensory enrichment therapy. We're going to share those simple exercises of sensory enrichment therapy with you, and also two things that you can do at home to generally optimize the environment and boost the effectiveness of sensory enrichment therapy, and then a Q&A. So, what is sensory enrichment therapy? Sensory enrichment therapy, we call it sensory enrichment therapy because you do the program at home, and it's sensory-based activities designed to stimulate brain growth. The program is a branch of the field of neuroscience called environmental enrichment. Essentially, environmental enrichment shows that modifying the kind of sensory experiences you have has an impact on the way your brain works and the way it develops. Sensory enrichment therapy is really a brain therapy. By enriching your sensory experiences in a way that is adapted to your needs, the therapy is capable of affecting the way your brain performs in a wide variety of areas. And the sensory games that are part of this therapy are pretty short. They look pretty simple and very natural, but the program has been the subject of randomized controlled trials that have shown and replicated its effectiveness in a very powerful way. To explain a little bit what environmental enrichment is, we've got a 2-minute clip from our certification course for health professionals. It's also part of the course for parents, and I'm just going to key it now. I just want to double check that you were able to hear the audio on this, Sarah?
I wasn't able to hear it, but I wasn't sure if the attendees
Oh,
were.
you thought maybe it was just you. Then that's kind of silly. Let me play it again.
Years ago, research scientist Mark Rosenzweig did an innovative experiment. He created an enriched environment for rats. Some rats were introduced into an environment with all the fun, food, smells, and toys a rat could dream of. Others were given only food and water. Then he compared slices of both rats' brains. The rats' brains in the enriched environment were bigger, heavier, and had more blood vessels, neurons, and connections.
So this led decades and decades of research into looking at how the brain grows, how the brain develops, does it grow past the age of 5, all those things. Today, we've got over 2,000 papers demonstrating that enriching the environment of lab animals can have a tremendous impact on their brain development. Those enriched brains, when exposed to neurological challenges, show a remarkable ability to compensate. And so we thought, if this works that well in lab animals, why isn't anybody trying it with children? Here's a list of the human neurological disorders that have been replicated in the animal model over the years. And the items that are starred are the animal models for autism. And for each of those conditions, scientists were able to dramatically improve, or in many cases, completely eliminate the symptoms and the disorders with environmental enrichment. In fact, and it's really cool, in most cases, the rat, after having had that disorder simulated in them, and in some cases it was as simple as just hitting them on the head for, to simulate traumatic brain injury. It's poor rats, really, when you think about it. In most cases, so these rats, after environmental enrichment, outperformed the rats who did not have any of the neurological challenges and were left in their standard cages. So again, if this works this well in the animal model, why are we not doing environmental enrichment with people, right? And this is what we did. We translated the environment enrichment protocols to make them available for people. On this particular image, you see on the right, this is the rat, and the way they expose rats to new smells frequently in their cages is just come in and bring in a scented cotton, a Q-tip. And what we've done with our kiddos is, it's very simple. We just get them to smell. Today, our library of exercises has over 500 games, and that these take a few minutes to do with your kid. In a typical sensory enrichment therapy session, you would have 4 or 5 of these activities, and your session would be customized to your child, and it would change every couple of weeks. In the next video, we recorded a series of interviews with Claudie, who's the pioneer behind sensory enrichment therapy. And in one clip, she explains a cool story about how she came across the importance of art in a sensory enrichment therapy program. Let's hear her.
Art is the one that makes you feel happy, motivated, is the key of memory and control of movement. So my conversation with him was, if it's possible to transfer something that is pleasant to the animal model, because he was working with animals, I will come back and tell you. So he was completely approving the transfer as long as I follow this protocol. What he was doing at the time, he was flashing lights in the face of cats, and they had the little pipe going inside the brain of the animal, and then they could see that there was more and more dopamine produced by the brain when they were flashed the light. My feeling was that it may not be very pleasant for the kids I wanted to work with. Flashlight? No. So my transfer for visual pleasure was using paintings, which I first experimented with typical kids in a huge daycare in France. I studied 107 children who were every day exposed to sensory enrichment, and specifically were shown art. Either they were doing Mona Lisa as a puzzle, or they were just given a few minutes to look at an art piece. The results were baffling. Things that happened were not at all expected. So I definitely started to study the impact of art on the human brain.
And like I mentioned before, this program was then evaluated in randomized controlled trials conducted with children with autism by the University of California, Irvine. And they saw that within the 6 months of the trials, the children who received sensory enrichment therapy on top of standard care were 6 times more likely to make clinical gains compared to the children who were only doing standard care. In the replication study, they saw that because so many kids were making so much progress compared to the control group, they thought, well, what if we re-diagnosed with the ADOS, which is the Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule, if I'm not mistaken. That's the way of measuring, of diagnosing children with autism. What if we re-diagnose them after the 6-month trial? How many of those lose their diagnosis? And they saw that 20% of the children in the enrichment group progressed so much that they actually lost their diagnosis. So, part 2, what are those simple exercises of sensory enrichment therapy? Before we show you the first game, I want to explain something about brain chemistry. Neurons in the brain communicate one with another, and that's how you get the brain to do stuff. Everybody knows about the electrical signal, right? It's very fast, and the neurons send an electrical signal along the wire, except that the wires don't actually connect. There's a little gap between each neurons. They come really close, but so the electrical signal cannot go from one neuron to the next directly. There needs to be a translation. So the electrical signal arrives at the end of the neuron, and it's translated into a variety of different chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. Those chemicals translate the electrical message, cross the gap, go to the next neuron. The next neuron receives that combination of chemicals, translate that into an electrical signal, and so on. So now that you know about brain chemistry, and I'm going to skip the slide where I had a little bit of an animation that kind of explained what I just explained to you verbally. Now that you understand this, if we could impact the way the brain regulates, produces, releases those chemicals, in particular serotonin and dopamine, we could have an impact on those messages that are being translated. And in fact, a lot of the children with developmental disorders have issues regulating their serotonin. Either there's too much in the blood, or too much in the brain, or too much in the gut. With dopamine is a frequent issue with kids with ADHD and so forth. I want to show you a list of what dopamine does. Dopamine is involved in movement, it's involved in memory, it's involved in sleep, mood, pleasurable reward, behavior, cognition, attention span. So if you can help the brain regulate dopamine better, then you can have an impact within a few weeks on those things. With serotonin, we're dealing with stress, we're dealing with social skills, we're dealing with learning as well, the translation of sensory inputs, with sleep again, with feeding, with the immune system, even digestion. I had a call this morning with a client about digestion. And neurogenesis. Serotonin, with a healthy serotonin regulation, you can improve the ability of the brain to create new cells. So, what have we got for you to help you with dopamine in particular? They did a study with rats again, and they saw that compared to just breathing air, a brand new smell would boost their dopamine levels for about an hour for about 200%, by 200%. But if they combined the smell with another sensory activity, and I believe in that study, they paired smell with touch, with just a stroke on the back, just petting the animal, the dopamine levels will shoot up, not 200%, but 400%. It doesn't take a brain scientist, no pun intended, to see that if you want to give those benefits to a child, then all you have to do is present them with a smell and a tactile activity. Now, it has to be a smell that they like. The tactile activity has to be a thing that they enjoy. And a lot of our kiddos don't necessarily enjoy being touched. So, Sarah, how did you do it with your girls?
Yeah, I mean, my girls are 6 and 12, so there's a bit of an age gap there, and I expected there to be some differences between the application with them. As it mentions on this slide, sometimes there may be an opportunity to rehabilitate the sense of touch, and I had maybe been concerned that we may have to do that with my eldest. She's sensory defensive, so doesn't like to be touched, can't hug her, those kinds of things. So it actually was okay to start. We didn't need to do the rehab, but I did start very slowly, just a few seconds, pairing that with the scent, just to give her some comfort that it was going to be very brief. We worked up to about 1 minute is what it's recommended. And of course, I gave her a choice of the scent. With my youngest, also gave a choice, which is also helpful on tough days to avoid some power struggles, giving them choice in that. We did learn on an essential oil bottle to use the lid, because a few times she got really close and it got right up the nose, which does kind of impair the process. But there was also some days where she actually didn't want me to hold something in front of her for her to smell. So we'd modify it. We might put it maybe on her collar so it was close to her and still effective. So, we would just make do with what we needed to modify for each child, and it would still be effective.
Yeah, and what about smell? How did she like? It sounds like you use essential oils, which is very convenient, right? It comes in bottles, and you have a variety of them, and you can purchase them on Amazon. It's pretty good. How did you have to modify that for her?
I mean, it took a few times for them to sort of pick their favorites, which is also fun for them to engage and for them to have some say. And they're convenient, right? I mean, you can do this really anywhere. You pop a couple in your purse or in your pocket as if you're going to be out for the day. It really is so fast and easy, and it's fun for them.
Cool. I just checked the Q&A chat box. I just want to mention to you attending, if you have any questions during the webinar, I'm surprised none of you have asked, what smell should you use? When I wasn't specific about that. So if you have any questions, just put them in the chat box, and as they come in, I'll just glance over to see if it's relevant to interrupt the webinar, or otherwise we'll just keep them for the Q&A at the end. So that's for exercise number 1. Combine smell with touch and get 400% dopamine. I'm going to skip this slide. It's just a slide of, different other kids and how it's being presented to them. But I think with Sarah, you're getting a much better experience. Let's switch to the second protocol that we want to share with you. This is a protocol that we share very rarely in webinars, and it's called the water game. But before I explain to you what the water game does, I want to tell you about the part of the brain that we're trying to work on. And the part of the brain that we're trying to work on with the game we're about to show you is the corpus callosum. It's a fancy name for the main bridge that connects the two sides of the brain. And for complex tasks like expressive communication, planning tasks, following instructions, you need efficient communication between the two sides of the brain. And there's many, many studies showing that in developmental disorders, 90% of the kids have some issue with the corpus callosum, with that bridge. Either it's smaller or it's thicker, and so information doesn't flow quite as efficiently as it can. And so one of the very first things that we will do with almost every client that comes to our program is some exercises to try and expand that area, try and promote easier flow of information between the two sides of the brain. And the game, one of the easiest game and most popular games that we prescribe is the water game. Kids love playing with water, and this is no exception. One bowl has warm water, maybe bath temperature water, and the other one has got cold water. And the kid dips his hands. I'm going to play this video while I'm doing this. You dip your hands simultaneously into the bowls, and then you take your hands out briefly, then you switch the bowls, and then you dip again, and then you switch again, and do that 2, maybe 3 times. You try not to touch the sides of the bowls, and I'm going to explain why. with this game, we're trying to send, when you dip your hands and the left hand has cold water, you're sending cold signal from the left hand to the right hand side of the brain, because the right hand side of the brain processes the left hand side of your body, and the left hand side of the brain processes the right hand side of your body. And at the same time, your right hand is having a warm water experience. And at that those two very pure, very strong, I was gonna say pieces of information, those strong signals cross over more or less at the same time. What happens with cold? Cold is a threat signal for the brain, and so it will stop for a split second everything it's doing to prioritize the processing of that strong signal. So it's going to focus on that area. And with the warm signal, you're sending a soothing, contrary, contrasting, but also soothing. And so you're telling the brain, this is good, you want this. And by repeating this, you're kind of exercising like a muscle your bridge between two sides of the brain. I was saying that's important not to touch the sides of the bowls because we're trying to keep the signals as pure as possible. And the only two receptors in the skin we want to stimulate with this exercise are the receptor for cold and the receptor for hot. You have actually different receptors for those two signals. You have receptors for texture, for pressure, for pain, and we don't want to use those. But real life always happens, right, Sarah?
Sure does. It's like you said, water is kind of a universal fun thing for kids for the most part. And this is a favorite for both of my kids for sure. And for my clients' children as well. It's kind of the one that they talk about for sure. It did take our kids a couple of sessions to really, for the novelty of the water play to settle in and for them to focus on sort of what the mission was. But that's okay, right? I mean, it's not about getting it perfect out of the gate. It's important for them to have a good experience. So I sort of, put aside what, my definition of success was the first few times. And, and then after they sort of understood what was expected, it's kind of a game to like, oh, can you not touch the sides, right? So it took a bit, and that's okay. What I found interesting is when they really got the hang of it, they just wanted to keep doing rotations. You're really only needing to do maybe three or four rotations, and they would just keep going back and forth. They would want to do it for each other. It was quite pleasant, or even longer than the 2 or 3 seconds that it needs to be done. And that's okay, because they're still going to get benefit out of it for sure. And they also would ask for it, even if it wasn't assigned on the worksheet for that period of time. And I wouldn't say no, because again, there's benefit, even if it's not the target for that particular worksheet. So it's important to help them maintain that positive experience with something like that. So that was, it's definitely a go-to favorite.
Yeah. I want to give a warning as well to people listening. This is a very powerful protocol. Those signals are really strong. And I know that when I do it, I get dizzy. Okay. So typically, and it's one of the reasons why we don't often share this game publicly. We usually have a therapy coach that monitors this, and we give this in the context of another program. So if you want to do the water game, maybe what you want to do right after it is some kind of soothing protocol. And the gentle claw and smell that we just described earlier is a very good way of soothing the brain. So if you want to do those two games, I would say do the water game, and then right after that, a nice pleasant smell with a nice pleasant touch. I see some questions coming in. So somebody says, okay, I was waiting till the end to ask this question, but yes, please tell us which smell is best. All right, we'll cover that in the Q&A. How often and how many times a day do we do smell and touch? Very good question. We'll go into that actually in the next slide. And my 4-year-old son cries when the phone rings. So no matter what the ringtone is, but not for the dad. Phone is ringing. Not sure why is he doing. I think, yeah, we'll keep that one for the Q&A as well. Okay, so next, part 3. 2 ways to boost the effectiveness of sensory enrichment therapy. And I would say 2 ways to boost the effectiveness of any therapy program that you're doing. What do you think, Sarah? We should have changed the title on this slide. What do you think?
My mind reading skills aren't as good as they should be tonight.
So
would you like me to introduce the video, or did you have something else in mind?
No, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we're going to have a video now, and it's going to unpack several sensory experiences that you can do throughout the day with your child that are very pleasant, and it will boost the effectiveness of the therapy sessions that you do, whether that be once or twice a day. And if you have questions while you're watching, it's about 4 minutes. So if you've got some questions that come to you during that time, feel free to put them in the Q&A and we will have a peek at them.
For improved results with sensory enrichment therapy, we recommend that you expose them throughout the day to brief, pleasant sensory experiences. The simplest and most natural way to do this is to turn existing routines into enriching routines. For example, every time you get into the car, you could do a sensory pairing before you drive off. Every time you sit down for a meal or a snack. Every time you help them get into new clothes. You don't have to interrupt them or what they're doing to do the protocol. You can join them and at the appropriate time, do a pairing with them and then leave them be. In some cases, they may stop what they are doing in order to take in a complete experience. That's the ideal. Below are 2 examples of protocols pairing smell and tactile senses that you can do during the day. The gentle claw and smell is the most recommended, but if they are resistant to being touched, you can warm them up to it by substituting in the smell and feel protocol until they are ready. Bath time. One of the best and most popular ways to help the brain recover at the end of a day is a warm bath followed by a hand, toe, or foot massage while wrapped up or covered in a warm towel. Feel free to adapt this procedure to fit with your family and bath time routines. Bedtime. At the end of each day, our brains are drained, especially when we have had a lot of things to deal with. It is important to help the brain rejuvenate at the end of the day and prepare for a good night's sleep. As they get ready to sleep, have them listen to a few minutes of relaxing orchestral music and put a scent on a tissue and place it inside the pillowcase, or find some other way to have them smell something throughout the night. You can turn the music off after they fall asleep, or after 10 minutes, whichever comes first. There are things you can do to set up the environment that they are in order to passively expose them to sensory enrichment. Apply a fragrance to their collar. This way, as they move around, they will occasionally get a whiff of the scent. You can also add fragrance diffusers in a few key locations where you think they may go. Place textured welcome mats in a few high-traffic locations around the home and let them explore the textures with their feet. You can also place a textured mat under their desk or under their favorite spot at the kitchen table. Reduce stress. Number 1, reduce sensory overload. Most people who have challenges with processing information try to control their discomfort by creating overriding sensory information. The best place for them is a location where they can feel comfortable, a location that is quiet and generally deprived of visual stimulation. It is usually a good idea to speak softly around them. Give them enough downtime. Sensory enrichment therapy will help their brain grow stronger and develop new skills. While it's a good idea to watch for teaching moments, it is not necessary to impose teaching moments all the time. It's important to give them breaks during the day when they can do less and not be expected to perform. In fact, downtime is very important for the highest levels of brain performance.
All right, Sarah, do you want to emphasize, is there any part of the video you wanted to emphasize in particular? Or maybe I'll ask the attendees if you want us to clarify or go into more detail with any of the recommendations we gave during the last 4 minutes. While questions come in.
I can explain my experience.
Yeah, go ahead. Do you want to talk about the bedtime routine? I can have the right slides up while we talk. I've got a slide for the bedtime.
Yeah,
I've got one for bath time as well, and I've got one for music.
Yeah, we would. I mean, first of all, I just love that you're adding to existing routines. It only takes seconds, so it's easier to sort of add into your day rather than finding a whole new routine for something, especially when change is difficult for a lot of kids. And so, you know, and we would need to modify it, right? On those hard days where maybe my youngest was saying, like, I'm not having a bath, and I just didn't have it in me to you know, it was a deal breaker for my patients that day. We would just modify. So instead of warming up PJs or, you know, a towel, I would maybe throw a blanket in the dryer and, you know, throw that over her when she was, you know, to kind of mimic that the warm bath sensation without going through motions and causing a fight. As Kim mentioned, we homeschool, and so on those tough days, right, where things are not going as planned, it was important for us to reduce the workload, right? The video is talking about reducing stress, and so, you know, those days we would maybe do less academics, but we would add in maybe more foundations, more sensory pairings, those kinds of things. And if we caught it early enough in the day with a sensory pairing, it could really turn her mood around, which would be kind of a saving grace, which was really nice. And it would just help the stress level for both of us, which is also really key. And so for my clients who have children in school, that key time after school when they arrive home and their brain is kind of fried and they're just kind of done and they need that break, it's a great way to foster the brain to de-stress, so that it has margin for those neurological pathways and neurotransmitters to you know, to be created.
Sarah, you said something. You said it would turn her mood around.
Yeah.
Do you have a story you can share with us about that?
Yeah, I mean, we had done, say, the therapy session in the morning. We found that was most effective for us. And so, you know, but the odd day she'd have an afternoon where she was just having a real hard time. And after dinner, I would say, you know what? I'm going to just do XYZ, you know, pairing, what have you. And within seconds, she went from being disgruntled and just very oppositional to just it's just like she'd taken a happy pill. She was just instantly in a happier mood. And it was really powerful to see that turnaround in such a short amount of time. And a good reminder for maybe me to do the same thing. Take a moment for my own sensory pairings, maybe.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks for sharing. I'm going to fast forward through those slides. This is a cool one about music. Maybe I should stick with it. We have a lot of questions about, oh, what kind of music should it be? Does it have to be headphones? Does it remember the video instructions that we show our parents show an actor who's very compliant and will do whatever we want to do with him. So we always show the ideal version of the exercise, but the ideal almost never happens. So headphones, no headphones. What we're trying to do with the headphones is isolate the signal. Remember, like the water game, like with the smell, we want to be as specific and focused as possible. And so if you cannot do headphones, find another way of making sure that the music is the only source of sound in the environment. So maybe go into a quiet room or go in a car for that matter. Cars are great stereos these days. So maybe the car is a great place to go to just sit down and listen to some music. What type of music does it have to be? It doesn't have to be Mozart if your kid hates it. There's all sorts of different things. We want to make sure that there are no vocals, because vocals activate a whole other part of the brain. And we're not interested in doing that. We're just interested in getting the brain to work on processing a combination of sounds and activating the part of the brain that processes beauty as well. So, and this is actually a very good segue into the next thing we wanted to talk to you about today, about how to make any therapy program work better, especially sensory enrichment, because that's one we know most about. And it's coaching. You're going to need a coach, not because the exercises are difficult, but because you need to do the exercises in a way that your child engages with it as much as possible, to have the strongest stimulation as possible. You smell all the time, you touch all the time, and you hear stuff all the time. So what's the difference between having a sensory experience and a combination of sensory experiences that are going to pass that therapeutic threshold? Well, you need the intensity, you need the focus, and you need the right combination at the right time. So you don't need to know how the brain works to do this program well. You just need to get a sense of what is important about sensory enrichment and what isn't, for example. I don't know, Sarah, did you have examples of situations where you didn't know quite why you were given a particular game, but having a coach helped? What was your experience with, I think you ended up with Claudia as your coach?
I mean, I had the best, right? So having Claudia made all the difference for me, because I just needed that regular connection with her to ask those questions and share those struggles. And even though she knew our wins from the notes that I was submitting, she was always happy to celebrate that progress, right? And I could really tell it meant a lot to her that, you know, we were experiencing the change that we really wanted. So it was meaningful to have someone feel like they're really emotionally invested in our progress. That was helpful. And it, you know, especially if like a new issue had come up since maybe our last worksheet was assigned, she was really eager to tackle it, you know, and not just say, oh yeah, like just do the exercises. You know, she was, who better than the one who created the 500 exercises to just pluck out in a moment's notice. Well, okay, if this is the issue you're having this week, you know, she would target the issue with it and help me understand why that exercise is great for that. I really liked learning the behind the scenes piece about that. And also if I thought, well, you know, I'm all for it, but I just don't know that she'd be able to do that part of it, she would say, no problem. You know, I'm going to modify it, you know, to really work for her capacity levels. And she would put it on the worksheet right away and we could just tackle it right away. So that was just, it just made, I would feel, especially if it was having a tough week, you know, going into a coaching session and feeling like, I don't know if I can, you know, go through another day, let alone add therapy to all this. And, you know, every time I would come out of that session and just feel more equipped and encouraged that we could handle it together. And I think with anything in life, it's just really key to success.
As well as talking about your experience with Claudia as a coach, you are in a unique position, and I don't think we explained that when we introduced you to our audience today, is that you actually you've gone ahead and taken the certification course as a health professional because, well, tell us why.
I mean, it's with the background that I have, you know, I've seen a lot of effort into different therapies with either slow or no progress. And for us, it was just honestly really life-changing. And it might sound corny, but it is just the truth. And when I found out that I qualified to become a certified professional on that, I just couldn't jump on it fast enough, because I really feel passionately about helping people not feel alone and to see the progress that they want. And, you know, situations like these impact the whole family, right? And so I just really wanted to be able to help bring that to other families, and help having Claudia as a coach to help prepare me on how to be a great coach. So that was really helpful experience for me to have that I wouldn't have had if I just kind of hopped on board without going through the program. And it helps me be able to relate to clients because I've kind of been where they've at. And so that's really great. It's super rewarding to be able to get a text message or an email or a phone call and say, she's never said this before. He's never done that before. We were able to go on a day trip, or just as simple as like, we had a great day and it's been a while, and that we really needed that. And so it's just really rewarding, and it just really means the world.
And what's implied in your story is that you have the bandwidth.
Oh,
you have the
totally.
margin to go and help other families. All of a sudden, when your life was consumed with those two daughters who were struggling, were so uncomfortable and so angry all the time.
Yeah. And now we have a quality of life. I mean, that's really why we chose to phrase this webinar that way, was because, I did not have quality of life. I had no margin. And this has really done a miracle for our family. We really didn't have any hope because I had tried what I call all the things. And it's just, like I say in my testimonial, I mean, we saw more progress in a few weeks with this program than I thought we were going to have the entire time we did it. And it just makes me emotional still, because it just feels like I wish I had heard about it sooner. I'm sure you hear other people say that as well, but I just want to be part of, the movement of sharing this with people and for them to discover it for themselves.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, Q&A. Do we do the Q&A? Because I have a couple of other slides. Sarah, I can't remember. What are we doing now?
I think we had some information about the program to share, or was that after Q&A?
Do you want to do that now, the discount and stuff and the slides, or do you want to do the Q&A first?
That's a great question. Let's do the plan and the program, and then that will give people a few more minutes to come up with their questions, and then we can sort of spend as much time as we need to answering them.
Okay, because I was pretty sure, we were pretty sure when we putting this together that at some point one of the questions was going to be, okay, so you talk about this therapy program and it seems to be wonderful, but how much does it cost? So I thought we would briefly go through the three programs. One of the things you want to know about this is we're going to give you 50% off the first month. If you're interested in participating in this program, you can go from $69 a month if you interact just by yourself with a computer, and the computer prescribes a custom program for your kid, all the way to Claudia, our program director, creating a therapy plan just for you and for your kid based on long-term objectives. Okay. The cool thing about working with Claudia is that, in fact, we you know what, we have a guarantee for all of our programs, but only the Platinum plan has a results-based guarantee. You could say that the other programs also do. We basically promise you that if for any reason whatsoever, within the first month, something happens, or you just try and your kid just doesn't want to do it, or for whatever reason you decide that this is not for you, you want to cancel, then just give us a call and we will cancel your program and refund all of your expenses. We don't want you to be wasting your money. And it's the same for the Platinum plan. It's a lot of money because there's only one Claudia and her time is extremely precious. We're doing tons of pilots and we're still involved in research, but we'll back it up with a results guarantee. If you do an IQ test before you start the program and an IQ test at the end of the program, and the IQ has not changed, you get all your money back. Okay. What else do we want to say about this, Sarah? I think that pretty much covers it, right? for the
I think
program?
I also wanted to say there isn't a commitment, right? I mean, that's really key, right? That it's as long as what your family needs to be involved with.
Okay, let's answer the question. So, what smells are best? What smells are best? The smell that your kid likes the best is best. Sarah, do you want to answer this any differently?
I love it. I mean, I obviously go to things like citrus, those kinds of things, but absolutely, engagement is the first priority, and you can go from there.
If you really don't know, if your kid's nonverbal and he's not going to tell you, Mommy, I like the smell, right? I mean, that's the dream. You want to get there. But until you get there, you need to do sensory enrichment therapy, which involves a lot of smelling and a lot of touching. And the reason is, and we didn't mention that during the webinar, the reason we use those two sensory systems the most is because they are the ones that have the most influence on brain development and brain function. And they're the ones that have the most documented protocols and research showing that impact. We use all of the sensory systems, including the vestibular system, the proprioceptive system, all of those big fancy words that you probably have heard from your occupational therapist, for example, because they also work a lot with sensory processing. And we can talk about the difference between sensory integration and sensory enrichment if you want. But yeah, you'll be doing a lot of smelling, a lot of touching, and I forgot where I was going with this. Yes, the best smell. If you don't know, if he cannot tell you what the smell is, then watch for 3 physiological cues. When you present the smell to them, you will see 3 things, and that's how you know the brain is processing that smell, and so it's working. You will see a stare for a split second, maybe not. You will see a change in the way they're looking. Okay, you know that look. All of a sudden, something seems to click in their brain, right? You'll see that for a split second. You will see a change in their breathing, and you will see a change in their mobility. So basically, to just stop and process. And when you see those clues, you know it's gone to the brain. It doesn't have to be any longer than that. The ideal is you close your eyes and you sort of mindfully experience that new smell. That is by far the best. But it's a gradual process. And in fact, Sarah, did they smell right away deeply, your daughters?
No, my youngest, it's taken quite a while, and I had to just mind my patience in that area and just encourage her. And modeling, I think, is also really helpful in these situations as well, right? And doing it with them and say, if you notice that they're having a hard time with taking those deep breaths, you can practice that outside of therapy sessions. You can have one, they can have one. And so it takes some time. Have different expectations at the initial out of the gate, and you'll get there.
And one final tip about smell: if you don't know any at all and you can't really see those physiological clues I was mentioning, probably because, and he's just pushing you, really resisting, start with sweet, yummy smelling food like smells. Sarah, you talked about citrus. That's a very good one to start with. But anything that will smell like vanilla or strawberry or apple.
Berry jam was a favorite in our house, sometimes just on the tip of a spoon. And if, afterwards they, had a little bit, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. All right, next question. How often, how many times a day do we do the smell and touch? The effect takes about an hour, sometimes 2, depending on how well it was experienced and all of that good stuff. So if you want to have a continual, you should see a change in your kids' behavior right after you've done this. Sarah, you talked about the moods completely changing, right? If you want that, you can use it as a preventative method. You can, if you know your kid tends to get crankier in the afternoon, as soon as you get them from school, give them a chance to relax and do a smell and touch combination and settle them down. And you can just pepper your day. Look for many opportunities. My wife works with me and we share an office, and her deal is whenever she walks into the office, she does a gentle claw and smell with me, because I also need to feel good. And so yeah, you find tips like that. Okay. Is it important to have kids smell while hands are in the water? Oh, do the smell with the water game? No. The water game is powerful enough on its own. You don't really want to do anything else beyond that. So you want to do the smell and touch after the water game or before, but not during. Can this be used with adults? Absolutely. We don't have clinical data past the age of 18, so they didn't do the randomized control trials with adults, but we have served in our I was going to say clinic, it's a virtual clinic, I guess. With our program, we've helped, I say 30% of the 3,500 or so clients that have come through this program were above the age of 18, and even seniors. And their progress is just as consistent as younger children, if not more. I think it's because they know why we're doing it and they want it more than the little kids who don't really know why you're doing therapy. Will
I
insurance
would just like to add to that is
Yeah.
that I have a client who actually started for herself before she started with her clients because she didn't have she understood the program, was all
Her
for
children, you
it.
mean?
Yeah, so the parent did it, had her husband do it for her prior to starting with her children because she was all for the program, but knew she didn't have the margin to do it. So we worked with her to give her some things that would help her improve her serotonin and dopamine, and it was for a few weeks, just to kind of help her get started, and it was really helpful to be more effective for her children.
Yeah. Will insurance companies cover this cost? There's only one company that we know of, and they reimburse it if you live in a rural area of Utah. So it's a very small, so probably 99% no. There's a lot of loopholes. We're working on it. We're working with the FDA right now to clear the Mendability expert system as the first digital therapeutics to treat the core symptoms of autism. And that's one step towards getting reimbursed by private insurance and Medicaid. So we're working on it. I'm not sure if you can answer this at the moment. I'm an occupational therapist and was wondering how I can become part of your team / bracket a coach. Is this a possibility? Yes, we have an online certification program, and Sarah, you can tell us all about it.
I loved it. I've done lots of trainings in my life, a few college diplomas and those kinds of things. And so I've loved it because it was really well put together. A lot of good information, but presented in a way that you could understand. And I felt equipped to begin working as a certified professional. So I would absolutely recommend it.
And so as a certified pro, now Sarah has her own Mendability Pro account, and she can send emails to people. And when they sign up through that email, they become her own clients, and she can see everything about their worksheet. She can do some, she can do almost everything we can do. And so Sarah could be your therapy coach if you wanted to do this program. You could ask for Sarah specifically because of her experience as a mom, and yeah, so there. And Natalia, yes, we're assuming you have to have at least a bachelor's and several years of experience in a health related field to certify in this, or a master's degree in a health related field to qualify to become a sensory enrichment therapy coach. So next question. Oh, not a question, but related to the topic. I had a patient who was extremely upset. Nothing could calm him down, kicking, screaming, hitting. And once we provided him with essential oil to smell, he immediately stopped and his mood and behavior changed. Yep. Yeah, we got many of those stories. And I think there was one other question that I wasn't sure I understood, so I'm going to try and guess. My 4-year-old son cries when mom's phone rings, no matter what the ringtone is, but he doesn't cry when it's dad's phone ringing. Not sure why. That is way above my pay grade. We need Claudia to be on this webinar to answer this particular question, because there's auditory processing, but there's probably some other things going on because two phones, one of them ringing and it triggers something, the other one doesn't. There must be something. We need more details. So anonymous attendee number 1, if you could give us your name and contact details, we could reach out to you for additional information. All right. Does this help with epilepsy? Good question. Yes, but because this is a telehealth service, you have to be followed by a neurologist before you start mendability and sensory enrichment therapy. Epilepsy is the kind of stuff. There's a couple of other situations where we need you to be followed by someone. If there's any chance of suicidal thoughts, for example, we need to make sure that you're followed by somebody local who can monitor this. It's a couple of other situations, and epilepsy falls into one of those. But yes, we actually have an anti-seizure protocol. And should we make that one of the bonuses, do you think, Sarah?
Not.
Yeah, why not? We'll think about it. So about the bonuses for this webinar, I know which ones of you actually attended because the system tells me, and I know which ones of you stayed till the end. So those people will get that the email from me with the slides, the instructions, the discount codes, and the link, the special link to book a consultation with Claudia to get that additional exercise and maybe talk and do, she'll do like a quick interview to see what would be the perfect exercise to have you try besides gentle climb smell and the water game. And I think that covers it for today. Did you, Sarah? Oh, another question just came in. Does sensory enrichment help with decreasing oromotor activity? My son chews everything. Yes, oromotor. A lot of our kids who are developing their speech get stuck at one or more of the developmental milestones required for developing spontaneous, natural conversations. And one of those steps very early on is, blowing bubbles and mouthing and very often we have kids who are stuck at that stage. And we actually have a webinar on that, and I'll point you to that. If you go on our website, webmendability.com/webinars, you will see a couple of webinars on speech, and we've got an article as well on developmental milestones, along with some suggestions, generic suggestions. The best would probably be obviously to do the therapy program, but we've got some general advice to give you as well. Okay, no more questions. Sarah, any parting words for attendees?
I'm just so excited that they know about it now. And I just can't wait to hear how these exercises and foundations help them. And, I don't know if we talked about it, but, doing these things, you should see you should be able to notice some changes within just a matter of days. And that's so huge. So
I'm
for
trying
sure,
to show our faces. I've lost a little thing where I could say stop sharing my screen so that oh well, never mind. It's hiding. Never mind. Sorry, I interrupted you, Sarah.
I would just say for sure, if you've got some, questions, or you've got some reports of some things you've noticed that are positive from this webinar, please send them in. We'd love to hear that.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. Well, evening. Bye-bye.
Take care.